Depending on how you count it, you may say it is 7 days to the election, or you may say it is 8 days to the election. Depends on how you count it. Sometimes we count it that it's 7 days to the election because on Friday, this time next week, we will say we have 0 days day to the election. Well, some other people may say 8 days to the election. Whatever way we count it, we know that the general election, the first part of the general election would be Saturday of next week. So we wanted to give a little briefing of where we are now and what we are doing and what we hope to do in the remaining of the days to ensure that the election is successful. Over the weekend, we finished the training of the supervisory presiding officers, that's the SPOs, and we've done the selection of those of them who would participate in the election as SPOs. Right now, starting from today, for 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we would have the training of the potential presiding officers and the assistant presiding officers that would actually conduct the election at the polling units on election days. That is going on now. What else have we done? Of course, you know that we are through with the collection of permanent voters' cards. And some of you would want to know the figures. The total number of registered voters in Edo State going into this election is 2,501,081 persons who have registered to vote in Edo State. However, the total number of PVCs collected is 1,996,088, which means that 79.8% of the voters' cards of those who have registered to vote in Edo State, 79.8% of them, the cards are out there with them. So if we were to have an election, we don't expect to have more than this number of persons as votes. We don't expect to have more votes than this in the election in Edo State. The number of uncollected permanent voters' cards is 504,993. But let me quickly add that the bulk of these 504,993 are people who registered between 2010-2011 to vote in the 2011 election up to those who registered to vote in the 2019 election. As a matter of fact, more than 399,000 of these 504,000 are from that era. So for those who registered in this last registration exercise, 2021 to 2022, quite a large number of them, I think more than about 75% of those cards have been collected. As you know, we had expanded the number of polling units across the country sometime in 2021, and the total number of polling units in Edo State is 4,519. However, going into this election, we tried to limit the number of voters in a polling unit to a manageable figure so that on election day you don't have such a crowd in a polling unit. We discovered at some point that while some polling units had very large number of registered voters, other polling units had very few. So it would mean that on election day you can have one polling unit where you have more than maybe up to 2,000 registered voters, and it takes a longer time to finish voting there. Just across the road or a few meters away, there's another polling unit that has maybe only 30 registered voters. And we thought that we should find a way of evening this out so that people can be moved to nearby polling units to vote rather than where they were registered to vote. And this is what we called migration of voters. Migration means that you were registered to vote in, say, polling unit 005 of Ward 2 of local government A of state B. But on election day, because of the number of voters in that polling unit, you have been moved to polling unit 009, which is still in that ward, not far away from where your polling unit was meant to be, so that you can vote there. assuming you didn't know of this until the day of the election. It's such that if you go to this place, they'll say, oh, sorry, your name is not on this polling unit. It's not in this polling unit. You are in this other polling unit, and that's it over there. Just walk down maybe 50 meters away or across the road, but definitely within the same ward, you'll go there to vote. And for those of you who have followed the election before now, you'll find out that before now we had what we call voting points. So you go to a large polling unit and they will say, this is very large. So they have like maybe 3 or 4 points for voting in that polling unit. So they could just say, check the voters register. If your name is from the surname, if your name is from letter A to, say, G, you will vote at this desk. If it is H to maybe M, you'll vote at that desk. And all those votes from those different voting points are pulled together as a result of the polling unit, that particular polling unit. Now, when we expanded polling units, what we did was to simply convert those voting points into polling units, and they became independent polling units. And then we decided where to site them away from this one, because the idea was that a lot of people came from distances to this polling unit that was so large. So now, creating new polling units, we tried to site them in those locations where there was no nearby polling unit, and encourage people to either transfer, people in this big, large polling unit, to either transfer there, or if people were registering afresh, they are aware of that, they transfer there. But at the end of it, we still found out that we still had large crowd in the old, in quote, mother polling units. And then there are other smaller polling units. In fact, I'm sure you also heard that there are some polling units that there won't be election because they have 0 voters. In Edo State, we have only one of such that had 0 voters, and there won't be election there, so that's not the issue. But there are other ones that would have had maybe 20 registered voters, 50, 90, 100, whereas there are other polling units nearby that had up to 1,000 or more registered voters. So we simply moved the persons there. It's not something to worry about so much. The total number of polling units affected by this migration across Edo State is 850. That is out of the total 4,519 polling units. So what we've done is that we've printed out the registers for those polling units affected by migration. We've given to the electoral officers in those local government areas. They've gone to those locations to display them and encourage members of the public there to come and see and know where exactly the polling unit would be on election day. But like I said, assuming nobody knows of this and turns up to vote on election day, they will just tell the person, oh, sorry, this is not where you are going to vote. That's where you're going to vote. It's not going to be anywhere. They will have to walk a long distance, so it shouldn't affect. But we thought to let you know so that we can also pass the message to the public. Later today, we will also be having a similar conversation like this with civil society groups. If you recall, we had actually hinted to this before now in our meetings with you, even with the civil society groups and the political parties themselves. So this shouldn't be a cause for worry. Now, in addition to this, we still have polling units that still has large numbers despite this migration. And there were also some polling units, because of the peculiarity of where they are, there was no other nearby polling unit to migrate people to. So we didn't touch the number of people there. Because I emphasize this in my state particularly, that in doing the migration, please do not migrate people to anywhere that is far away. Even if there's a large crowd here, do not migrate them. So what we've now done, the headquarters has now done across the country, is to still identify the polling units that still has a large number of registered voters and decide that those places will have more than one beavers assigned to it. Remember, every polling unit has one beavers. But for those kind of places that are still large, we'll have more than one beavers. We may have 2 or 3 beavers assigned to that polling unit. And then when they go there, they will also tell people that if your name is number 1 to this or letter A to this is where you vote. There's a Beavers, this is where you'll be accredited. There's a Beavers there. So there'll be different Beavers machines for accrediting the different people. But the voting is still in the same place. It's the same ballot box that would be used. It's just for the purpose of accreditation. Now, having said this, I also need to stress, we'll stress this more when we meet with the civil society members and the political parties, that on no occasion, no matter how large the place is, and we want to attend to people timeously, on no occasion should anybody be given a ballot paper to vote if the person has not yet been accredited. So you must be accredited using the Beavers, and after then you are given your ballot papers to go and vote. If people push and say, no, we don't have the time, I'm already here to be accredited, just give me the ballot paper. We shouldn't allow that, because once you do that, you will now run into a problem where you may have more ballot papers issued than those accredited. Some people who would be pushing for that may be pushing for it genuinely because we don't want to waste our time here now. Look at how large this place is. The other people, they finish voting. In quote, people may genuinely feel that way. But many of the people will do it for all the ulterior motives. They may do it so that the total number of votes in that polling unit may be more than the accredited. And of course, you know the consequence of that. Any polling unit that you have more registered votes than accredited voters, the result in that polling unit would be cancelled. And we don't want that to happen. So I thought I should hint us about this. Now, so those polling units that are large, that will have more than one Beavers machine, the total in Edo State is 96. We have 96 polling units in Edo State where they will have more than one Beavers, but every other polling unit will have only one Beavers machine. Desiring to vote in an election shall present himself with his voter's card before a presiding officer to be accredited. So if you don't have a voter's card, you cannot vote. And if you don't have a voter's card, don't bother coming to the polling unit. You will not be allowed to vote. Our personnel and our materials would be there before 8:30 to set up. And at 8:30, the polls will open. In the event, for some reason, that doesn't start at that time. Remember, the election starts from 8:30 to 2:30 p.m. If at 2:30 p.m. there are still people lined up to vote, we'll attend to the last person on the line at that time. So that's why you see some polling units, election may go on till late, sometimes to 4 p.m. or later, depending on how large it is. Whereas some other polling unit, once it's 2:30, polling has closed because there's no other person who has come to vote at that time. If the Beavers doesn't function, then we have provision for a backup for it. But the important thing is that you cannot vote if you are not accredited. And you will not be considered to be accredited at all if you don't come with your voter's card. Let me also mention this. For the people that we've migrated from where that ought to be the polling unit to another polling unit, it doesn't matter that their card reads, say, polling unit 004, and where we're asking them to vote is 016. The important thing is that we have in that, because we've already migrated them, the name will be in the list for that polling unit, and then it will be recorded in the Beavers. And also to say, for people who have made a transfer from one polling unit to another, and for some reason they did not collect the new PVC for the place that indicates the place they've transferred to, they can still vote with the old PVC because the voter identification number, VIN, is the same. And that is what is important for us to call up the information. Provided you come with the authentic voter's card that is for you, that has the VIN, is the VIN that we'll use in calling up your details in the new polling unit. And also talking about the migration, you can check online. You can go to voters.inecnigeria.org. If you go there, for those of you who are registered, you can even check it now, and you will see when you go, you indicate the state where you're registered to vote, the local government where you're registered to vote, input your surname, your first name, and your date of birth. It has to be consistent with the one you gave us, in case you have more than one date of birth. Remember to use the one you gave us. Okay, you know what we are saying now. And then once you put that, it will pop up your information. It will show you the polling unit where you're registered to vote. I'm sure you would also know that the chairman of INEC has had meetings with the governor of Central Bank, and they're working out something. We don't have fears. We've been assured that we'll have the funds we need for the election, both by way of transfer and physical cash. So we are working on that. If you recall, the headquarters of INEC had signed a memorandum of understanding with 3 transport unions: National Union of Road Transport Workers, National Association of Road Transport Owners, and the Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria. And at the state level, we are also relating with the leadership of those unions. We've told them the requirements in terms of number of vessels and equipment, vehicles we need, and we are working on that. So everywhere is taken care of in our arrangements. Under the current voters register of INEC was done in 2010, at the end of 2010, towards the 2011 election. Okay, so the registration season of 2010-2011 was for people who voted in 2011 general election. When we got towards 2015 general election, registration also started in 2014. It was to add on to what already existed. So when I tell you that we have 2.5 million registered voters in Edo State, it means total number of people who have ever registered in Edo State from 2010-2011 to date. So when I also tell you that 1,996,088 cards have been collected, it means from that time up to when we closed. So if we are going into the election, you know that if you collected your card in 2011, you can still vote with that card. If you collected your card in 2023, you can still vote with that card. So all those cards make up this 1.9 million out of 2.5 million registered voters. The issue of security, INEC does not directly manage security. We work with the security agencies in the country to provide security for personnel, for materials during the election. And so far, that's what we've been doing. We've been coordinating with the security agencies, and we look forward to successful election.